Welcome to the Accidental Business Owner podcast, the show that lifts the lid on what it really takes to grow, scale and successfully exit your business without losing your sanity, soul or savings. Real stories, raw lessons, proven strategies. Let's dive into this week's episode. Hi, Jay Allen from My True North and host of the Accidental Business Owner podcast. Today we're talking about the owner's operating system and being able to ensure that you've got the right data to be able to make the right decisions. Data's a wonderful thing. I've got a particular interest and desire and enjoyment out of being able to understand what it is. But that's not always been the case. So today I want to share with you as to how I learnt to enhance the decisions that we make in business by utilising data and the types of data that you as a business owner ought to be collecting in order to be able to make bigger, better, more strategic and faster decisions with a lot more confidence. Now, first of all, let's just go back a million years, as it were, when I first started out in business. I bought an existing business, having just left corporate, a business that was already trading, that was 14 years old, that had already got 4 members of staff, that had got a forward order book, that had got some regular custom. I bought a business and circumnavigated beyond or leaped ahead of that first nervous day of setting out on my own. I've done that since, and we've launched 2 businesses from scratch since then. But certainly my first business, I inherited an existing trading, operating business. But a business that wasn't collecting anywhere near as much data as we subsequently learnt to do because of the impact it had. We often, in those days, waited for the phone to ring. And if the phone didn't ring, we'd spend 50 quid and put an advert in the local paper, because that's how long ago it was, and we'd drum up some business. Alternatively, we'd look through our existing customers and the filing system that we used to have, and big Rolodex files of each individual customer and their work that we'd done for them. And if we noticed that their folder was getting towards the back of the cupboard because they hadn't been taken out and updated recently, it was a prompt to be able to make a quick phone call and say, hey, how are you doing? We've not spoken to you for a while. What's been happening? Where are you since last we did X? Would you like us to come out and do Y? And Sharon's job in those days was to be able to continue to be able to build relationships with existing customers to ensure that at least once a year they purchased something from us. And that's how the business had been operating for 14 years prior to my purchase. But I was keen on being able to grow a bigger business, that the margins in the business that I'd bought were very, very tight, shall we say. There was not much room for error. That I wanted to be able to grow the business, not just in revenue, because that's a vanity number, but certainly to be able to move from a single digits to double digit net profit. And to do so, we didn't just need to win some more clients, we needed to be able to look at how we operated as a business. And as a result of that, I couldn't make those big decisions, certainly on a business where 4 salaries other than my own were required or were impacted by the decisions that we made within the business. I needed to be able to have something to warrant the decisions that we made to move from X to Y. And therefore, I got my head in the books, I went on some courses, I started talking to other more successful, larger business owners to understand what it was that they did or didn't do to establish as to what did we need to do. And that's where my understanding into the importance of data to support decisions started and first originated from. But ultimately, my passion for data, my insistence of data has predominantly come from forming the ADDAZERO methodology and by asking over 117,000 other SME businesses some very, very specific and tailored questions around 5 elements of their business, enabled us to be able to collect a colossal amount of data, and by doing so start to see patterns and predictions that were winning true again and again and again. So, as you know, if you've been following the podcast for a while now, I talk about MSOFT, the 5 fundamental pillars in the business, 6th if you want to include the owner mindset and the willingness to be able to challenge and to move and to grow and evolve and develop. But the 5 fundamental pillars of the business in order to be able to have not just scale, but sustainable scale. I'm not talking about sustainability and being all carbon neutral. I'm talking about sustainable growth, growth that is continual rather than the peaks and troughs that we often see in smaller, perhaps less systemised businesses. So first of all, MSOFT, Marketing, Sales, Operation, Finance Team. And then today's podcast is looking at the types of data that we ought to be collecting in each of those 5 areas in order to give me as the business owner far more confidence to spot trends or risks and to have some predictability with regards to when to move forward and which directions to move within. So first of all, marketing. What data are you collecting with regards to your marketing? Well, some of the things that we tend to collect are which platforms are performing better than others, the frequency of posting, and when do we post, be it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or 6 o'clock in the evening. There's a lot of test and measure of tweaks and amends, and using some AI tools these days to be able to help and support, measure and make some predictions or recommendations, but ultimately to understand which platforms, which posts, where and when are getting, one, the most eyeballs, the most impressions. So we take an impressions number, and then we look at the interactions number, be that comment or emoji, and we'll also measure which emoji to determine as to whether that's got more sway than others, the speed in which we've responded to them, the length of conversation that we've had with them either in a DM or via email or as a phone call as a direct result. Marketing's job is to raise awareness. Shouldn't be measured in pounds, shillings and pence, because marketing's job isn't to put cash in the bank. Marketing's job is to be able to create awareness. So we've got a whole series of measures in place to determine, are we raising the right awareness with the right amount of people in the right manner that makes it easiest to hand on to sales. So marketing's job is looking at platforms, frequency, content, timings, impressions, interactions. They're the types of measures that we have in place for our marketing. Then it can hand over, because marketing should be hand in glove with sales. Sales can now pick up to determine on the amount of inquiries, the amount of prospects. What's the difference between an inquiry and a prospect? An inquiry is somebody who has shown an interest, a prospect being someone that we've now built a one-to-one relationship with and maintains interest. The difference between an inquiry is perhaps somebody that's shown an interest. They've visited a website or a web page or a landing page. They might have downloaded a free guide or used one of our assessments, either the business scale-up assessment or the business freedom assessment. The QR code in the bottom corner allows you to be able to see one of those. So an inquiry is they've moved towards us, they've shown an interest. A prospect is somebody that's shown particular interest in a particular product or service or industry or sector or thing that we have to offer and knows the fee for doing business with us. The difference between inquiry and prospect is we've now engaged in a one-to-one conversation with a tailored offer that they're aware of the level of investment required. And then the conversion rate, how many people that we are prospects that have subsequently made a purchase, either from what it was that they'd initially shown an interest to, or perhaps something else that we'd introduced as part of that nurturing sequence to determine as to, well, you've shown an interest in our Pillars of Progress programme, but in actual fact, through the conversation, we've identified that you probably get more benefit of our Taste of Freedom programme, or perhaps a VIP day, or were you aware of our mastermind, or were you aware of our pricing programme? So we've tested the waters to establish, are we giving the right thing to the right person at the right time to achieve the right result for them? And as a result of that, we can now measure the impact that we've had in our sales process in order to be able to win that client. The types of numbers that help me to understand as to capacity in the business, and are we doing the right thing in the right manner with the right offer to be able to maintain the right desired conversion rate. Then there's operations, and operations is all around business efficiency. It's about understanding, in a service-based business, the total amount of billable hours capable within the business and the fraction or percentage of time that we are hitting that number. How many people are on sick or on holiday, and therefore the impact on available hours. It might be that you're a product-based business and it's how many units have been sold, what's on the shelf, and what's the shelf life of the product, to be able to understand flow through the business. Operations is all around, are we doing the right thing at the right time and the right efficiency? And obviously last week's podcast was looking at being able to block out time so we don't end up multitasking and diving from one to the other and another, and reducing to about 40, 50, maybe a maximum of 60% efficiency by dancing around and not having designated blocks of time. Are we utilising technology in the right form in order to be able to be as efficient as possible? They're the types of things that I'm likely to be measuring in my operations dashboard, my CEO operator's playbook that enables us to be able to streamline and systemize the business and make bigger, better, bolder decisions because we've got the data to support the decisions that we make. Then there's finance, and finance is all about cash flow. It's not just about cash in the bank, it's about understanding pipeline. It's about working with sales to understand conversion rates, to establish and identify potential pipeline of people that have shown an interest and an inquiry rate from marketing, the amount of people that are being fed into our database and the amount of conversations that we're having, where they are on that pipeline journey, where they are on the decision-making process. How long does it take the average person to make that decision, from first showing an interest to making a deposit payment or paying in full? Understanding the customer journey in order to be able to have a predictability of what's likely to happen in the months to flow. Understanding that although I've got 27 people have downloaded our assessment this week, that it's likely to be 5 to 6 weeks before we're having a sales conversation with them, and perhaps 8 weeks before they make a deposit payment for the conversion rate that we are predicting. So it understands the sales cycle to understand profitability and cash flow within the business, and understanding when to be able to make good, big financial buying decisions or selling decisions, or when to offer an offer or a bundle in order to be able to meet those financial requirements. What the break-even point is within the business, our tax liabilities and when those payments needs to be made by, to understand the flow of money into, through and from the business. And there's some of the measures that we're likely to be able to have in place for our financial dashboard. And then finally, team. And team is all around not just customers and suppliers, but also staff and associates and affiliates and the other people within our community with whom we are party to on this journey from where we are to where we want to be. Having a moral scoring to understand as to how much the morale is within the business, and are we happy or are we sad? Are we frustrated? Are we walking towards being able to move towards something or away from something? Are people happy and engaged and working effectively, or is there a little bit of discontent? And if so, what's causing that? But also going back to an NPS score, an understanding as to our customer satisfaction and the return rate of business. Being able to have all of these things in place enables us to be able to make bigger, bolder, better decisions faster and more confidently. And the good news is that if you haven't done so already, use the QR code that's on the screen or the link in the show notes to be able to get your business scale-up assessment. Because if you choose to work with us on our Pillars of Progress programme, that dashboard, or at least the template, is gifted to you as part of that training, enabling you to simply fill in the dots and dashes as opposed to have to start from a blank sheet of paper. I hope that helps. I'd love to have a conversation with you to learn about the data that you're collecting and how it's helping to shape your decision making. God bless, take care. I'll see you again next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Accidental Business Owner podcast with me, Jay Allen. If today's episode sparked a thought, challenged your thinking, or gave you a new tool to grow smarter, share it, rate it, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment of transformation. God bless, take care, and I'll see you again next week.